happens. Here we go.
Did we decide anything about?
No, we haven't decided. We have to wait for Bruce to come back and say, let's do X, whatever X is. So we will wait and hear from Bruce.
Oh. Well, it'll probably be a good idea to have the summer off.
We can do that. We did it before.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'd like to recharge and
Yeah.
look into some. I'd like to do something where people are required to read. I don't know how you can make them do it, but
Right.
I've heard that ever since the pandemic, it's an issue that people just, I guess, have trouble concentrating.
Yeah.
Well, this is the 80th anniversary of the Allies landing in Normandy.
Yeah.
I looked at Reagan's speech 40 years ago, and he was at Point du Hoc. I've been there, and there's this open beach. It's 100, maybe 200 yards. I don't know. It's shallow water, so just getting the beach can go out a ways, and so these rangers, there are 220 rangers, and their sole mission was to land on this beach, cross the beach, and climb up these cliffs, which were they had ropes with grappling hooks on them, and they would throw the grappling hook up, and the Germans would either try and throw it back down or cut the rope it was attached to or whatever. And and you looked at this, and then I went to the cemetery behind it, which is just filled with thousands of graves of white crosses. And of the 220 rangers, 90 of them made it.
Oh.
I don't know how any of them made it, okay? Because the Germans had crossfire, they had lots of ammo, they're very experienced. It's just unbelievable that anybody could have done anything like that, and so forth. So that's what today is, the memory of that. So we're going to go. We haven't really spent any time on shamans, so we're going to talk about the Hopi today. And the Hopi, will give you a background. There's some books that have come out that relate to this, that are new books.
The one on the left, though, Frank Waters, that's a really famous, wonderful
Yeah.
book.
So anyway, so what we have here is the Hopis. Let me put this down here. Put it up here. I don't know.
I think when I was in high school, that was kind of cutting edge.
So the Hopis primarily live in northeastern Arizona. There's around Flagstaff, which is just south of the Grand Canyon. And the people are all, the Hopis are all in this Colorado River tribe, in this Colorado River Indian reservation at the border of Arizona and California. So there's two reservations. One is by Flagstaff and one is over by the Arizona-California border, okay? Now, as of 2010, there's under 20,000 Hopis, people that identify as being Hopi. So you can see they've been decimated. It is a sovereign nation. The United States, I believe, has signed treaties with over 500 of these Native American sovereign nations. I don't think the treaties are worth anything. Anytime there was anything of value that they found in the land of the natives, they just took it and rewrote the treaty. So
Yeah.
anyway, there is a government-to-government relation between the United States federal government and the Hopis, and the the Hopi reservation there by Flagstaff is only 6,000 square kilometers. I mean, it's not a lot. And what's the other thing about this? There's 34 different clans. So the 20,000 Hopis, really are 34 clans. So they're very segmented. So the primary meaning of the word Hopi is a behaving person, someone who's mannered, civilized, peaceable, polite, and adheres to the Hopi way. And this concept is really the crux of the religion, the spirituality, and its view of morality and ethics. So to be Hopi is to strive toward these concepts, which involve a total reverence for all things, peace with these things, and life in accordance with the instruction of the creator or caretaker of the earth. So the Hopi observe their religious ceremonies for the benefit of the entire world, not just for the Hopi. There's matrilineal clans, and the children born into the clan of their are born into the clan of their mother. So that's everything is keyed off your mother. The clans extend across all villages, and the children are named by the women of the father's clan. So there's some balance there, I guess. After the child is introduced to the son, the women of the paternal clan gather and name the child in honor of the father's clan, and the children can be given over 40 names. The village members decide the common name, and the current practice is to use a non-Hopi or English name or the parents' chosen Hopi name. So a person may also change the name upon initiation or a major life event. So there you go. The Hopi understand their land to be sacred, and their role is really caretakers of the land they inherited from their ancestors. Agriculture is significant to their lifeways and economy. The pre-contact architecture that is reflected in early Hopi society, they lived in pueblos, and the perception of home and family are key. So many Hopi homes share traits of neighbor pueblos, and the early communal structure, they have great houses as well that are called kivas, and each of the rooms in the kiva has specific activities: a living room, a storage room, a religious sanctuary, bedroom, whatever. So the Hopi creation story centers around Tawa, the sun spirit, and Tawa is the creator, and it was he who formed the first world out of Tokpela, or endless space, as well as his original inhabitants. So it is still traditional for Hopi mothers to seek a blessing from the sun for their newborn children. As with all things, there's different accounts of this. So some have it that Tawa first created Sotugnang, whom he called his nephew, and sent him to create the 9 universes according to his plan. And Sotugnang also created Spider Woman, who served as a messenger for the creator and was an intercessor between the deity and the people. So we have this Spider Woman running around. In some versions of the Hopi creation myth, she creates all life under the direction of Sotugnang. And then there's still other stories that tell that life was created by the hard-being woman of the West and the hard-being woman of the East, while the sun merely watched the process. So there you go. There's multiple Hopi creation stories.
Oh,
The Masawu, skeleton man, was the spirit of death. Let's see, what does this thing say? Oh, spirit of death, earth god, doorkeeper to the fifth world, and keeper of fire. And he was also the master of the upper world, or the fourth world, and was there when the good people escaped the wickedness of the third world for the promise of the fourth. So there's this notion here of worlds, and we're apparently in this third world, but some of them have escaped to this fourth world where things are good. Masawu is described as wearing a hideous mask, but again, showing the diversity of myths among Hopis. He's alternately described as handsome, bejeweled man beneath his mask, or he's bloody, fearsome, and horrible. Take your pick. He's also assigned certain benevolent attributes. One story has it that Masawu helped settle the Hopi at Oraibi and gave them stewardship over the land. He also charged them to watch for the coming of Pahana, which we'll see below, the long lost white brother. We'll come to this in a second. Other important deities include twin war gods, the Kachinas, and the trickster, or coyote. So there are these 4 ages of Hopi. According to Hopi legend, when time and space began, the sun spirit Tawa created the first world in which insect-like creatures lived unhappily in caves. With the goal of improvement, Tawa sent a spirit called Spider Grandmother to the world. Spider Grandmother led these creatures on a long trip to the second world, where they took on the appearance of wolves and bears. And as these animals were no happier than the previous ones, Tawa created a third new world, and again sent Spider Mother to convey the wolves and bears there. By the time they arrived, they'd become people. So Spider Grandmother taught them weaving and pottery, and a hummingbird brought them a fire drill. The fire drill is you take a board and you take some tinder and take a stick and puts a leather tong around it and get the stick rotating to catch the tinder, get a spark of the tinder. That's a fire drill. So there's 2 main versions of the Hopi's emergence into the present fourth world. We're in the fourth world, or the fourth age. In one version, after evil broke out amongst people in the third world, with the help of Spider Grandmother or bird spirits, a hollow bamboo reed grew at the opening of the third world into the fourth world. And this opening, Sipapu, is traditionally viewed to be the Grand Canyon. The people with good hearts made it to the fourth world. So that means a lot of them didn't make it. The other version, mainly told in Oraibi, is that Tawa destroyed the third world in a great flood. But before the destruction, Spider Grandmother sealed the more righteous people into hollow reeds, which were used as boats. And on arrival on a small piece of dry land, the people saw nothing around them but more water, even after planting a large bamboo shoot and climbing to the top and looking about. Spider Woman then told the people to make the boats out of more reeds and used island stepping stones along the way. So the people sailed east until they arrived on the mountainous coasts of the fourth world. So upon arrival in the fourth world, the Hopis went on a series of great migrations through the land. Sometimes they would stop and build a town, abandon it, and then continue with the migration. They would leave their symbols behind on the rocks to show that the Hopi had been there. The divided people wandered in groups of families, eventually forming clans named after an event or sign that a particular group received upon its journey. So these clans would travel for some time as a unified community, but almost inevitably a disagreement would occur. The clan would split and each portion would go its separate way. However, as the clans traveled, they would often join together, forming large groups only to have these associations disband and then reform with other clans. So there were these alternate periods of harmonious living, followed by wickedness, contention, and separation that play an important part of the Hopi mythos. This pattern seemingly began in the first world, continues even into recent history. One of the Hopi religious societies is the Katsinsa Society, reflecting the close association between the world of the living and world of the dead. Spirits play an integral role in the land of the living. So these Katsinsas are associated with clouds and with benevolent supernatural entities called Katsinanam, the pearl of Katsina, which inhabit the San Francisco peaks that are just north of Flagstaff, Arizona. According to Suzanne and Jake Page, the Katsinam are the spirits of all things in the universe, of rocks, stars, animals, plants, and ancestors who have lived good lives. So there are these spirits floating around. Since they're supernatural, you can't see them. There's a discussion of the Hopi legend of Pahana. The Hopis had long anticipated the coming of Pahana, either by coincidence or because of a common root of the legends. Pahana was due to visit the Hopi in the very same year that Quetzalcoatl was expected to return to the Aztecs. If you may remember when, let's see, it was Cortez landed in the south of Mexico and burned his boats and told the Spanish warriors that were there with him that we don't have any choice now. We've got to go into Mexico, into the land of the Aztecs. And the Aztecs, though, had this legend that they had been created, or a lot of things had been given to them, like agriculture and knowledge of astronomy and so forth, by a white person called Quetzalcoatl. And so, but Quetzalcoatl was going to come back to the Aztecs. Well, when Cortez landed, the Aztecs said, "Oh my gosh, here's this white person, and they have beards," which is what Quetzalcoatl had. So this must be Quetzalcoatl, which was a bad guess, since they went ahead and they went into Mexico City, captured the emperor, held the emperor hostage, and then, butchered everybody in sight, even though there were only, like a couple hundred of them and hundreds of thousands of Aztecs. So anyway, the Hopis are mixed up with the Aztecs with this notion of Pahana, and in the same year that Quetzalcoatl shows up. So the Hopi found out about the Spanish from the Aztecs. They were in contact with them. And as far as the Hopi were concerned, some Spaniards arrived 21 years later in the person of the Spaniard Pedro de Tovar, one of Coronado's conquistadors. So maybe I'm wrong, it's Coronado, not Cortez. And he was the first white man to be seen by the Hopis, and also probably the Navajo. However, the Hopis, unlike the Aztecs, put a lot of tests to the Spanish Pahana. And after they failed him, they said, "Get lost." So the Hopis made it through okay for a while, till, of course, other bad things happened to them. So here's a different summary here, and I want to show you this thing up on this. Oops, it's here. Okay. Did I skip over it? What happened? Hold on. I must have done something. Okay. So the Hopi were also in contact with the Maya, and they had lived with them and they traded with them. And so to cut to the chase, to summarize what we just heard, the Hopi believe that we've suffered 3 previous cataclysms in the world. The first world, which was apparently with these ant type things, was destroyed by fire. Maybe it was a comet or an asteroid strike or volcanic eruptions, but anyway, it was fire. The second world, which they talked about with, say, these bears or other creatures, the second world was destroyed by ice, a great ice age, perhaps. And then the third world was destroyed by a tremendous deluge, a flood. Now, these 3 global destructions were not the result of merely random changes in the earth or astrophysical phenomena, but they were really due to humankind's disregard for Mother Earth and for the spiritual dictates of the Creator. In other words, the cataclysmic events in the natural world are causally connected to the collective transgressions or negative of human actions. So unlike the Maya, the Hopi rarely specify about the dates for the shifting of these ages. It's been said the Maya were masters of time, the Hopi are masters of space. So the verb tenses here are deliberate, given that the Maya no longer follow the long count calendar of 390-year cycles. Instead, they now use the Tzolk'l in the calendar of 260 days, which is incredibly complex. But the thing to keep in mind is up here in the corner, this is a picture taken from a rock at the Hopi Reservation near Flagstaff. And it's called Prophecy Rock. So it shows here, if you look at this, apparently 2 paths. One path is going up this way and one path is going down this way. So the one going down here, there's a person here and they're pointing like down at the earth, and there's a little circle here. Maybe it's a happy circle, I don't know. But there's one person here. The other path going up here, there's lots and lots of people. There's something here that you might constrain to be, maybe this is a train, looking at the thing with the wheels on the train, and here's where the engineer is, and there's some smoke coming out of it and so forth. So there's 2 paths that the Hopis say, and it's up for us to choose. One is one where we choose to get much more tied into earth and into nature and into spirituality. And one is where we choose to get much more into materialism and continue on this path. And if we continue on this path, nothing good is going to happen. So let's go ahead. The Hopi said that there was once a great drought, and they heard a lot of singing and dancing coming from the San Francisco peaks. When they went to the peaks, they met the Kachinas. I've got pictures here of what the Kachinas look like, who returned with the Hopi to their villages and taught them various forms of agriculture. So the Kachina spirits live in the Hopi villages for perhaps 6 months out of the year. And then there's a 9-day Niman, or going home ceremony, that concludes the Kachina season with an outdoor Kachina dance, where the line of Kachinas bring harvest gifts for the spectators, and they bring Kachina dolls for the young girls. And there's different Kachinas that perform every year. So you can see there's a wide variety of Kachinas here. Most favored is the Hemis group of the Kachinas, who perform accompanied by a variety of Kachina manas. After the going home dance in late July or early August, the Kachinas return to the San Francisco peaks for 6 months, and they don't see them. They've gone invisible. And the Hopi believe that these dances are vital for the continued harmony and balance of the world. So it serves the further and vital purpose of bringing rain to the Hopi's parched homeland. This area of Arizona is, if it gets 10 inches of rain a year, I'd be amazed. So there was a public prediction by this gentleman of how this fourth age, our current age, would end. And it comes about as follows. In the summer of 1958, a minister, David Young, was driving across the Four Corners region of the US, and he picked up an old Hopi man named Whitefeather. The spiritual elder of the Bear Clan, which is the most sacred of all Hopi clans, confessed that all his sons were dead and that the Hopi ceremonial cycle was slowly becoming extinct. After sensing that Reverend Young was trustworthy, he decided to pass along 9 primary Hopi prophecies that together would herald the destruction of the fourth world. Whitefeather stated that these 9 signs would mean the fourth world was about to come to a close. He said his ancestors had foretold the coming of all of the following events long before they arrived. First one, white-skinned people would take possession of the land and carry thundersticks that strike lightning, parens, rifles and pistols, parens. Spinning wheels with voices in them would come, meaning whirring wagon trains or whining car tires, or perhaps the spinning of records and CDs. This is just the interpretation of what they meant here. Huge, strange beasts would appear looking somewhat like buffalo, but with long horns. This would be cattle. Remember, there wasn't any cattle. The cattle was brought from the New World, from the Old World to the New World. Snakes of iron would spread across the land, railroad tracks. A giant spider web would crisscross the land. The telegraph, the telephone, power lines, now the internet, World Wide Web. Rivers of stone would make pictures in the sun that would crisscross the Hopi land. These are concrete highways in the desert with their mirages of water. When you have a lot of heat on a highway, it looks like there might be water. The ocean would turn black. All living things in it would die. So, for example, in the summer of 2010, there was a humongous oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Young people with long hair would come to Hopi land to learn native ways. This is the counterculture revolution of the late 1960s and early 1970s, maybe. A dwelling place in the heaven would crash to earth, producing a brilliant blue star, the Sasquatch. The blue star Kachina would remove his mask in the village plaza during a sacred Kachina dance. And after that, all Hopi ceremonies would cease entirely. There's a claim that this might be a satellite of some sort that crashed. So there you have these things. There's some other predictions made by various Hopi elders that include the possibility of the demise of the fourth world. These involve an increasingly erratic climate, a few specific signals or signs of social and political imbalance, prophesize changes in the earth, including earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, record flooding, wildfires, droughts, and famine. The Hopi also predicted a number of technological changes that would signal the end of the fourth world. Long before it happened, the elders said a gourd of ashes would fall on Earth. This might refer to nuclear explosions. The first atomic blast took place in New Mexico at Trinity, and then there were the bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then lots of other hydrogen bomb tests on Pacific atolls and in the American Southwest, with their carcinogenic effects on anyone that was downwind. the Hopi prophecies include the fact that people would ride in horseless wagons on black ribbons. So this is perhaps cars on asphalt. In addition,
I
aerial,
would think it would be railroads.
I'm just saying, in addition, aerial vehicles would travel roads in the heaven, pathways in the sky, either benign contrails or deleterious chemical trails from the unburned fuel. The Hopi also stated that one of the final signs is that people would be living in the sky. So we do have an International Space Station. It's been in orbit for, I don't know, 20 years. And so people have been living in the sky for that length of time. The Hopi elders also foresaw numerous social changes. They said that Hopi delegates would travel at 4 different times to the House of Micah, which is the UN building in New York City. Each time their pleas for peace will be ignored. The socially conservative Hopi culture also believed that the end of the Fourth World would be signaled by women starting to wear men's clothing. For example, in the women's liberation movement. So there you have it. That's what the Hopi think are cooking. Now, we've got a different read on this. This is actually planted by some guys that were in the Black Ops side of things, and they defected. So now they're viewed as renegades. They're white hats instead of black hats. And they linked up with this crew called Sasquatch, which is found all over the place. And there's a lot of parallels between what Sasquatch says and what the Hopi say. But so judge for yourself as we go through this. But the white hats believe that this is a little more precise. The Hopi got most of it right, but here's a little different read on it. First of all, we start with how the earth was born. Then there's an age of oceans, and so there actually are ocean creatures. Then we have on land the ant people, which the Hopi talked about. We had the lizard people, not bear people, but lizard people. Then there were bird people that evolved. Then came Sasquatch, and finally Homo sapiens. So let's go through this and see what's going on. So in the creation, there's a universal creator spirit, the unique source of energy and consciousness in all dimensions. So right from the get-go, they're saying there's more than 3 dimensions. Everything is evolving and creating diversity at all times. So there are more and more species evolving, being created. Creation involves the continuous involvement of consciousness. So consciousness works to guide, to have these changes occurring continuously. Because there's already observations of so many other planets around other stars, it's not out of the question that some of those other planets would have life, extraterrestrial species, and these other species would conceive of this universal creator spirit as well. The problem that they see here is that the human mind, unlike these other species, has disconnected itself from this universal creator spirit, from its soul. It's from anything spiritual going after scientific wisdom. And this is what must be corrected. And so some of these extraterrestrial species are apparently here to try and help us do this. There's a council of star elders that emerged shortly after the birth of the universe, and they offered to provide guidance to different species in their evolutionary path to go to higher and higher dimensions, higher and higher levels. So we would be in the 3rd dimension. The Sasquatch are probably in the 4th dimension. Some of them are in the 5th, and there's others that are in 6th, 7th, 8th dimensions, and are more and more enlightened than.
There's no such word as shaman.
Well, so the
Sorry.
council here involves a lot of species from many different planets that share their consciousness and spirituality, and they use telepathy, so they're linked in this way. This is their common mode of communicating, and they provide guidance according to the divine law. Some races are older than others and provide experiences that others may lack, and others have capabilities that others lack, and they share these. So there's a huge amount of diversity here with this Council of Star Elders. Humans were invited to join the Council of Star Elders, but over time they disconnected as the mind clouded over the soul. And they're spiritualists that did keep a link with this universal creator spirit, but most people couldn't do this, with exceptions such as Buddha or Jesus of Nazareth or Muhammad and others, but they're exceptions. So the members of the Star Council, again, provide guidance to younger races. They're all younger than the Council of Star on all planets. So we start with the birth of the universe, and we go to the birth of the Earth. So Mother Earth was born from Father Sun. So we had the sun, and it provided a stargate for materials and souls. And out of the stargate popped Earth. And as the Earth was being born, Mother Earth, all of these souls got loaded onto Mother Earth from Father Sun. So these souls are all, again, in the higher realms. They're not material beings. So at first, the Earth was not fit to incarnate life. All of the consciousness was in the higher astral realms. And all of these souls started to evolve and change and mutate as conscious entities. So after a period of time, what came from the sun, which was the Earth, was able to cool down enough. And there were thick, hot, liquid oceans, which were open to life. And these oceans appeared. And so now aquatic life could live and incarnate with souls in these oceans. There isn't any land yet. So the Star Elders saw this, and they contributed to this aquatic life and created fish people. So the mission of the Earth consciousness was to assist Mother Earth in evolving and creating biodiversity, while the souls continue to evolve while assisting in this overall process. So the fish people were the first conscious entities on Mother Earth, but they were initially living in the higher realms, not incarnate. And over time, they achieved a great deal of diversity of consciousness and also biology, in part because they had a lot of time on their hands, and in part due to their linkage to the Star Elders, who were drawing on all this diversity all across all the different galaxies and stars. So the souls of the fish people are still on Earth, and they're called elementals, and they're encountered by mystics who use telepathy, and their purpose is to continue to assist the consciousness and spirit in evolution and change. So that's the aquatic age. Now, there's no free lunch, so apparently these dark lords emerged over time, and they saw Earth from wherever they were at, and they decided to shape some species for their own purposes. So the Earth had a slow rotation period. So basically one face of the Earth faced the sun, while the other side did not, and the heavier elements accumulated on the dark side. The sunny side being much warmer. The fish people incarnated on the dark side also. It was cooler there. But there were a few fish people that incarnated on the sunny side. A lot of them stayed just as these elementals or astral entities. So because of this imbalance, evolution occurred more rapidly on the sunny side, and the dark side saw many souls being able to find a suitable body for incarnation. And this led to the first mass extinction of life. The souls recognized this imbalance. that the elementals evolve more quickly and have greater diversity in higher realms. And so the fish people on the dark side evolve more slowly, but their souls recognize a desire for evolution to these higher realms. Land appeared, came out of the ocean, and it was a major continent called Pangaea. So over the eons, this landmass was initially volcanic, and it had all kinds of chasms to it. And then there were things like quicksand and everything else that you could imagine opening and closing. So the star elders from Orion, from the star system Orion, saw this, and they saw the fact that there was land here for the first time. So they allowed bacteria, algae, and fungi to form and evolve. And this in turn allowed Mother Earth to evolve. This is the first type of life on Earth. These are single-celled entities. So the notion of panspermia, that life spreads throughout the stars, is correct, but it isn't an accident. It involves active participation of higher consciousness and spirits and their actions, such as these star elders, in shaping life on new worlds. We're not alone in doing this. So eventually multicellular life started to appear. Worms, anthropods, arachnids, insects of all sorts. Some of them burrowed into the earth because the heavens were clouded over, blocking sunlight. So we might as well just burrow into the earth anyway. And eventually the landmass that was there with Pangaea imbalanced the spin of the earth, and the earth split. When it split, it spewed forth two roughly equal masses. One became Earth and the other became the moon. When this split occurred, the Earth started to spin about its axis much more rapidly. The Mother Earth was impacted by this trauma and started to evolve even further, and counseled the souls to evolve and to achieve higher realms. The moon started to create tides on the Earth's ocean, and the Earth developed its magnetic field. The existing land masses on Earth were pulled to the two poles due to the rotation of the Earth. And now the star elders stepped in and introduced plants, more sophisticated lichens, moss, ferns, all of which started to modify the atmosphere of Earth, because the atmosphere of Earth at this point is mostly carbon dioxide, and this is providing a mechanism to take the carbon dioxide out and turn it into oxygen. The star elders introduced insects for pollination of flowering plants, and these insects evolved into the ant people of Earth. So this takes us up into the ant people age. This is what the Hopi talked about. The ant people, or the insect people, assisted in the evolution of all these diverse species and spiritual entities, and there was incredible diversity. There's more types of insects on Earth today than there are of any other sort of species that anyone knows of, not even close. The ant people used their antenna for transmitting and receiving telepathy, and also, though, they could generate electromagnetic waves. So because of this, over time, their astral sensitivity diminished. They lost their connection with the soul, and they forgot the meaning of spiritual reincarnation process. And after getting lots of warnings to realign with the cosmic order, the ant people were banned from the Star Elder Council. And this led to their path to ultimate decline. Now, the Earth had two major continents, one at each pole. There were ant people on each continent, so they had nothing better to do than fight one another. And they developed all kinds of electromagnetic weapons that caused a massive loss of life and broke the two continents up into smaller land masses, which migrated toward the equator. So lots of people got killed, and this is an age of fire that ended things. Again, the Hopi got it right. The elementals and the ant people each attempted to recreate the biodiversity that was there once. And the Star Elders took a look at this, and they set up an outpost on a landmass on Earth. And this led to a species evolving, following not the soul of the species, but the soul of the individual. So they planted crystal entities all over Earth, and these highly evolved entities were programmed with messages of cosmic wisdom to influence physical and spiritual life on Earth with huge amounts of information in these crystals. So this would enhance the healing process, promote higher level consciousness, and the Star Elders used this to create pyramids and monuments that we see, as well as other things. So the Star Elders were busy doing all this, but they were also involved with connecting stargates on Earth to other stargates on other stars. So the lower lords that we're talking about, which are called archons, moved into Earth and discovered these bases of the ant people that were underground. The ant people bases had all kinds of electromagnetic shields and weapons, and they were able to destroy these reptiles, but they didn't harm any insects. And then they created some hybrids that could get past the electromagnetic shields and get into the bases of the ant people. So the ant people were forced to retreat even deeper with huge losses. And in particular, they had queens. The queens were the ones that laid the eggs. While they're small in number, they're the only entity that's capable of laying eggs. So if they lose a queen, that is a huge loss. So the ant people chose to retreat to bases under the oceans and link these bases with flying craft, not with tunnels. And then the archons countered this with nuclear weapons, more fire. So the archons chose to abandon Earth, and they went to the moon. The ant people abandoned Earth and they went to the moon. And when the archons discovered this, they began to try and stop this. At this point, the Council of Star Elders intervened with their fleet and weapons and forced a ceasefire between the archons and the ant people. This might have been the first time in the history of the Star Council that this ever happened. The ant people burrowed into the moon. They created bases there. The very few queens were left to lay eggs. The ant people turned to cloning, but each clone had far less spirit than the original ant people. The moon lacked water and food, so ant people had to get this from Earth. And the need to clone meant that the ant people used silica for the clones, which over eons led to the moon being filled with silica clones. These clones didn't breathe, yet they could tolerate higher levels of radiation. And there were still some ant people that incarnated in bases inside the Earth with their original DNA. So the end result was the ant people launched a huge counterattack against the Archon and the lizard people. And the Star Elders discovered this and forbade the ant people from flying from the moon to the Earth. And the Archons discovered this and sent nuclear missiles that pulverized the moon and turned it into debris. So the Star Elders proposed a permanent guardian of Earth, a hybrid of other species. And they looked around, and the most available gene pool was that for reptiles and amphibians. And after messing around, they created dinosaurs and many species of dinosaurs or lizard people that flourished on Earth. So after a huge amount of time, it was decided to use some DNA from Andromeda and Orion. There were other younger species from other planets, but they were unhappy. They got left out. The lizard people are also called snake people, because some lizards are evolved out of snakes. After eons, an incredible diversity of lizard people existed on Earth. The crystals were raising their consciousness, and many other species from other planets visited Earth by these stargates that went to all these other stars. So these younger species that got left out went ahead and abducted lizard people, began to modify their DNA so that they were mirroring what the younger species were doing. And they went to underground bases and discovered the colonies of ant people there. So they worked with them and they created a new hybrid lizard people. The lower lords, or the members of the Council of Star Elders, fell to, which were once members of the Council of Star Elders, really had fallen to selfish power hunger. So they were called devils, demon lords, evil masters, dark masters, cast out masters, on and on.
And is this according to the Hopi?
This is according to the white hat guys that are dealing with Sasquatch. The Sasquatch have dealt with the Hopi. So the Hopi talked about there being lizard people in there.
Right.
Then there were bird people. The destruction of the moon led to the debris going to the Earth's atmosphere. There was a lot of dirt in the atmosphere. Some reptiles developed wings and feathers to fly in this dense soup. So these star elders seeded the DNA of these bird people. And the winged bird people raised their consciousness and were called angels. They were being faithful to their spiritual mission. And a few of the bird people would eventually defect to the archons, to the bad guys. But the ant people, in the meantime, had replenished their number. They elected to rebuild the moon, which had been smashed. The star elders agreed to this because this would speed up the Earth's rotation and lead to a greater diversity of species more quickly. So the ant people built the moon to be 400 times smaller than the sun, but 400 times closer to the sun, so the moon would perfectly occlude the sun on Earth in a total eclipse. The ant people did this as a monument to their species to alert others that this wasn't an accident. Now, we still have these archons running around, and the star elders kept them in control, and everyone was watching everything else. So the archons elected to use these stargates to get recruits from star systems that they'd already held elsewhere outside of the solar system. So the star elders detected the stargates of the archons on Earth and shut them down.
Okay, so who is this from, Lord?
This is from the white hats,
And meaning,
meaning the guys that were in the black ops, and they defected, and they said, "Here's what we discovered, and we want this out there now so that people can hear it." And it's close to the Hopis, and the Hopis got a lot of this right. So that's why they wanted to get the word out. The archons sent expeditions to Mars and to the planet which is between Mars and Jupiter, and they created stargates and they sent the recruits there, not to Earth. And the star elders detected these stargates on Mars and shut them down, but they couldn't do that. So they finally ended up having the archons running around on this planet Malduk. So the archons amassed enough force to invade Earth, and they created a giant, massive moon-sized ship. They went and aimed at the moon and the ant people, but the star elders' defenses held, and the damage to the moon was minimal. But the star elders warned the archon fleet, and then they got rid of this gigantic command ship, and it crashed on the main archon base on Earth, which led to a huge extinction of life. So this is, again, another death by fire. But the archons were still left with Malduk. The star elders realized Malduk was there, and there'd be an invasion upon invasion of Earth. So the star elders exploded Malduk and created the asteroid belt. So here we've gone through the bird people. We now come up to Sasquatch. So the bird people have been conceived to be emotionally sensitive, to feel empathy and compassion. The star elders realized there needed to be a new type of hybrid that could live on Earth and protect it, highly developed spiritually with great psychic powers and great physical strength. So they found this giant lemur species, and they had that created to create Sasquatch, which is created maybe 50 million years ago. And the Sasquatch led the fight to destroy the archon bases on Mars. The Sasquatch lived thousands of years, unlike us, and they've counseled humanity for a long time. So they're there, but they are able to become invisible to go up into higher dimensions So if they get into trouble, that's what they end up doing. So this takes us up to the Homo sapien age, where now apes were used, but the difference here was that there was lots of love and compassion to be integrated into daily life. And Homo sapiens clearly has gone astray in doing this integration. But the Sasquatch are there and they're counseling Homo sapiens as to how to do this. So the key thing is that Homo sapiens was given free will, unlike some of these other species, to ascend to higher levels of consciousness, with each incarnation involving a path of evolution and growth. In each incarnation, all conscious memories of earlier incarnations were blocked out. And there are some of these bird people that are called Anunnaki that envied the moon of the ant people. And so they built a ship, which is actually a planet orbiting the sun, and that comes to visit Earth every so often. And it's out of the plane of all the other planets, so that's why it's not seen. So roughly every 3,000 years, it gets close enough to Earth so that they come and visit, and they try and do some coaching to help things along. So the takeaway here is that after all of this, that Homo sapiens is exactly working toward this ascension. This has been assisted by the incarnation of souls from planets other than Earth. And the reason for this is that they have no karma. They haven't lived on Earth yet. And so they're clean in this sense, but they're also enlightened and into love and compassion. And so they can assist in the ascension of mankind into higher realms. The archons have resisted this, but are gradually losing control, and they've been overwhelmed by the Star Elder forces. So the best is yet to come. So with that, you have what the white hats want us to know. This is, one of these things that just appeared in the last 5 years. And they're a group of these white hats. The guy that I knew who was right in the middle of this said, yeah, this is all true. But of course, people won't believe it because it sounds so, ridiculous. But he said, no, that appears to be what happened. And, for example, a lot of the things that we see as comets and asteroids are that when Malduk was blowing up, everything scattered into all directions. But because they're still attracted to the sun, they loop back around. And so they come back into the solar system, back in, for example, into Earth. And so it goes. So very different view of the world. The Hopi, were there. They got it, a lot of it right. And this is simply a view that the white hats wanted to get out there now. So that is it for tonight.
Wow.
Different theology, different history than we've been taught.
Right.
But there isn't any adequate explanation for how the moon, of all the moons orbiting planets in the solar system, the Earth's moon is the only one that has this quality that it'll perfectly occlude the sun. And the other thing that's obvious is it looks like there was a planet out there in what we call the asteroid belt. And the claim is there was, but it got blown up. So you had the solar system had apparently life on Malduk, Mars, and Earth. And there's indications there was life on Venus too. But so it goes. There's probably life on a lot more planets that we just don't know about.
There's some spiral form. It's like the Fibonacci sequence, but do you remember what it's called?
There's the golden
It's not that.
ratio.
No, that's the Fibonacci sequence. The one that is our solar system is. It's slightly different from the Fibonacci sequence.
There's this empirical rule due to Bodhi that says that the planets are spaced. I can show you.
But that, according to that, there should be a planet right where the asteroid belt is.
Yeah,
To the, the mathematical pattern. Yeah, that's it.
yeah, this
The
is,
Titus Bodhi law.
hold on, Bruce. So it's Titius that discovered this, but for some reason, Bodhi gets all the credit. I never understood this. That he came up with looking at the semi-major axis. Remember
It's
all of these
similar to the.
all of these orbits are elliptical. So there's he came off with A equals 4 plus X. The semi-major axis, or X is 0, and that gives you Mercury. X is 3 plus 4 is 7. That gets you the Earth. X is 6, so A equals 10. And so you end up with this little spiffy formula here, that the semi-major axis is 4 plus 3 times 2 to the n. And you can convert them into astronomical units. And an astronomical unit is the orbit of the Earth is 1 astronomical unit. And so when you do this, then you come up with this formula here. So if n is 2, then this is 4. No, if n is 1, 2 times 0.3 is 0.6 plus 0.4 is 1. So the Earth here is for n equals 1. And then it predicted that there would be this planet in the asteroid belt. I'm just looking to see. No, it doesn't show here.
But it's a kind of spiral.
And so here's Bodhi, who found this work by Titius, and so he put it in to his book, and everyone thought that Bodhi did it first. Anyway, that's what happened.
Right.
So there's a little spiffy formula that apparently holds true. It's not clear from looking at how the planets of other stars are, that how this formula has to get modified. There's now over 5,000 planets around other stars than the Earth that have been discovered, and so people are trying to figure out, is there some generalization of this that would work for any set of planets in any solar system?
Well, and the galaxies seem to be on a similar spiral.
The galaxies have this dark matter in it, so that's a harder to so anyway.
But there's still the interval, you can still.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of structure there
Right.
in these things. So anyway, that's it for tonight.
Okay, so I vote that we take the summer off.
You vote to take the summer off. Okay. Then we will send out a note to that effect, and we will send out a note when we reconvene, probably early October. That's what we've been doing.
All right.
when you're trying to get through September, September seems to be a little rushed. So start
Correct.
early October.
Right. So this is the last one this year?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, by the way, Ron confirmed a lot of this stuff here because he had landed on the Earth when there were just these single-celled creatures. So he was involved with trying to create multi-celled creatures out of single-cell creatures, which took quite a while, to put it mildly. But if you have a lot of time on your hands, you can do it. So.
right.
So anyway, okay.
Okay, well, have a great summer.
Oh, and you enjoy.
See you in October.
Let's be in touch from time to time.
Yeah, if you've
just
got
to say
anything that
hello.
comes up, give a yell, of course. We'll
Okay.
do likewise, but that's where we're at. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.